Welcome back to part 3, the final part of adding a new file system. So we've created a new virtual hard drive, we booted up Linux, we then partitioned it and formatted. In this step, we're going to make that partition accessible. Now in Windows, things are accessible through drive letters. So if I go to Computer, I see there are letters associated with the file system, C and D. If I plug in my USB, I might see an E drive in there as well. We have something similar to that in Linux, but they're just called mount points and they're ordinary directories. So let me go ahead and create one of these ordinary directories right now. I'm going to go to the root. Let me clear the screen so you can see what I'm doing. And I am going to go to the root of the file system. Okay, now from there, I'm going to make a directory. So we know that command already. Make sure that you're currently logged on as the super user. If you're not the super user, you're going to get an error message here, permission denied. And let's call this new directory. Today is July 19, so I'm going to call it July 19. So July 19, that's a mount point, and that's going to allow me to access that new hard drive that we just created or we just attached in Linux. I think it was around 300 megabytes. So we have the directory. We're now ready to use the mount command. So mount is going to associate the two. And what are we going to associate? We're going to associate the device file for the partition, SDB3, and we're going to associate it to that directory right there, that directory we just created, July 19th. Now, the command that I have here, mount SDB3 and mount it to the following directory, July 19. That's a perfectly good command, and it will work. But it is incomplete in a sense because it doesn't specify the file system. Now, if you remember back to MKFS in part 2, we formatted with extended4. Extended4 is the file system, the system for organizing files that supports journaling and minimizes disk corruption. So I'm going to put T for specifying type and extended4. And like I said, you can leave that out. Okay, mount is very clever. If you leave out that information, Linux is going to go take a peek at SDB3. It's going to see that you formatted it with extended4, and everything will work out fine 99.9% of the time. But for the command to be complete, and if you ever decide to do any advanced certification in Linux, you do need to specify the file system. So let's go ahead and mount, and it's telling me SDB3 doesn't exist. And of course, we can see why. If we look at that command carefully, we can see exactly why we got that error message. Remember what and where? Well, that's what we're going to mount, SDB3, but is SDB3 located in root? No, it's not. It's located inside dev. So let me use the up arrow to get the previous command and come over here and specify exactly where it's located. So SDB3 is located inside dev, and this time when I press enter, I don't get any error message, which means it probably worked. So how can I verify that this has been successfully mounted? There are many ways of doing it, but I'm going to show you 2 easy steps to make sure everything is fine. First thing you got to do is type mount. Okay, and when you type mount and press enter, okay, you can see right at the very bottom what we just completed. We can see SDB3, which is a partition, is mounted to that new directory that we just created, and it's been formatted with extended4. The RW here just means it's read and write. So you can see what's on that file system, and you can add files to it. Now, you can just stop right here, but I encourage you to do one more step because sometimes we mount, but not everything is perfect. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go to that directory, change directory /July 19. Okay, so that's the mount point directory. And I'm going to type ls here. Now look at this. This lost and found tells me that everything worked out perfectly. If I go to July 19, and I don't see lost and found, that means something went wrong. Okay, so either I didn't mount it properly or I didn't format it. That lost and found needs to be there. So when you see that lost and found, you can rest assured that everything was done correctly. Now notice it's blue. Blue means it's a directory. When we do a check disk or scan disk, and there's corruption there, it will take those file fragments that it discovers and drops them in the lost and found folder. There's no real mystery to it, but that's all it is. Now I could stop at this point. Okay, we've created the file system, we've formatted it, we've made it accessible through a mount point, but I just want to show you one last piece of information. When we type mount, we can see everything that got mounted, okay, including what we just mounted. That's what we just mounted right now, that last line. Here are a bunch of file systems that got mounted at boot time, okay. Where is all that information being stored? It's being stored in a configuration file. Remember where the configuration files are located? They're located inside etc. So let's do a change directory, etc, and look at some of those configuration files. I'm going to type ls here. Now, the two configuration files that we're interested in are fstab. There it is, the file system table, and mtab. That file right there. Let's look at both those files. Let's do a clear. So to look in a file, we have to do cat. Make sure you're a super user, otherwise you won't be able to do it. So let's cat out mtab first. That is the mount table. And it looks a little bit different, but it's really the same information. Look, that's what we just mounted. SDB3 mounted to the July 19 file. If I do the same thing with fstab, let me clear the screen, and let's cat out fstab, the file system table. It's very similar, it's spaced out, but the difference is that last line, that last file system that we mounted is not there. So what is the difference between fstab and mtab? Mtab are your currently mounted devices, okay, your currently mounted file systems. When you just type mount by itself, and that output that you're reading is coming from this file. fstab, the file system table, on the other hand, those are the file systems that get booted, that get mounted when you boot up Linux. So let's think this through. We boot up Linux. So what is Linux going to do? It's going to look at the file system table and see all the file systems that it needs to mount, the SDA1, the swap partition, all these things need to get mounted. And then subsequently, after it's started, you mount and unmount other file systems. What is your current mount status? That's found in mtab. So mtab are your currently mounted devices, and fstab, those are the file systems that were mounted at boot time. So current and mounting at boot time.